of deceit. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Tuesday, the 21st of April, year of our Lord 2026. Well, today we're going to look at Trump fakery. We've gone from WWE to WW3. We've gone from professional wrestling to civilizational annihilation under this liar and chief, or liar and thief, I guess we should say. But don't worry, be happy, because he's now signed a drug to push very quickly through, what does that sound like? Warp speed? Well, yeah, it's not a vaccine, but he's pushing psychedelics through. Yeah, we've got the the GOP, the government of psychedelics. It's the Republicans who are pushing this stuff. Well, remember, it was the CIA back in the day that started all the LSD stuff. You know, don't worry, be happy, just drop some acid, take some magic mushrooms, and get in touch with Satan.
Because that worked out so well for the 60s.
That's right. Well, we're going to take a look at that and at Trump's legacies of lies. We'll be right back. Well, first, some good news. Grassroots opposition has stopped a GOP. We had a couple of really bad bills coming out of the traitor of the House, Mike Johnson. And so the Republican leadership is pushing through some very bad stuff for Donald Trump. First, they were pushing through the FISA extension. That is still in play. But the first skirmish went to the good guys, the people wanting to shut that down, thanks to Thomas Massie and some others. And so they had another one that was still in committee. The House Committee on Rules postponed a scheduled vote on this bill. The bill would have stripped local governments of the authority to reject the installation of unwanted cell towers near homes, schools, and parks in their communities. Now, let me just say this. The Congress has no authority to do any of that, of course, under the Constitution. The 10th Amendment stands in the way of that. And throughout this, the people who led this opposition, will talk about states' rights. And I understand that's the popular phrase that people use. I don't want to be too critical, but we should be precise. It is the power of the states and the power of the people, some of which have been delegated to the federal government. But only those things that were specifically delegated to the federal government. They have no authority to tell you that you have no say as to where cell phone towers are going to be put. This goes back to 1996. It's kind of interesting. In 1986, we had the pharmaceutical bill to give the big pharma companies total legal immunity for injury that they did to children. Imagine that. With the pharmaceutical vaccines. And so then 10 years later, you had Bill Clinton push through the Telecommunications Act and did that with a GOP majority in the Congress. And so that was something that purported to say that you could not object to cell phone tower placement on the basis of health. You could only object to it on the basis of aesthetics. If you didn't like the way the cell phone tower looked, you could force them to build a pretty box around it or something, right? And so, nevertheless, that has not stopped local jurisdictions from stopping the cell phone towers. We've had situations where there have been cancer clusters near a school. That happened in New York. Cancer clusters of students, especially, and some teachers, because they put a cell phone tower right next to the school. And we've seen pictures of them putting 5G antennas right next to somebody's apartment window in New York City. That's a local jurisdiction issue as well. But, they're saying, well, we can't do anything about it. They don't want to do anything about it. They acquiesce to this. They abdicate their power and their authority to the federal government on all of these issues. As a testimony to the fact that the 1996 Telecommunications Act had no authority, they feel that it's necessary to strengthen this. And this is an effort that is coming from the big business concerns behind all of this stuff. And one of the people who has his fingerprints on this is Crenshaw, who just lost his, the eye patch, Crenshaw, eye patch McCain, as people called him, the big warmonger who just lost his primary. He got primaried out, and good riddance. But I guess he's working to get his retirement fund here. You know, this is you do the stuff and then you retire, and then the annuity kicks in from the businesses that you helped. Anyway, the bill would have largely stripped local governments of the authority to reject the installation of unwanted cell towers near homes, schools, and parks in their communities. Folks, it's just a law. If a law goes against the Constitution, and it has, you can stop it if you have the will as a community to do so. And people have stopped it for 30 years. That's why now they're talking about, well, let's pass another one just to scare people and intimidate people. It is done under color of law, this overriding of the Constitution. And so it's good news that people stood up to this. The Rules Committee vote is largely procedural. The committee can reconsider the bill, prepare for a floor vote, but legislative experts told the defender, these are the people who are talking about it as Children's Health Defense, that without sufficient Republican support, the bill is unlikely to proceed in the Republican-led House. Stripping away local control and individual rights to hand more power to big industry is never an acceptable solution. And so it appears that House Republican leadership, the traitor of the House, Mike Johnson, has abandoned his plans to pass the American Broadband Deployment Act this week. So, again, that is a comment from Jake Sherman on social media. They do not have the authority to overwrite local zoning laws, and something that they were not given any specific powers under the Constitution to regulate. And so, again, they want to forget about informed consent, don't they? They want to forget about testing and then tell you that you don't have informed consent. You know, we can't inform you if we don't know what the effects of this electromagnetic radiation are. Yet we do know. Many governments and jurisdictions have done some tests on this. And then they also want to think of it as a trespass on local property. Think of it also as unconstitutional accumulation of power into the federal government. And that's exactly what Children's Health Defense called it. They said it's a federal power grab, as virtually everything is, and a federal overreach. We see this over and over again. Long-term health effects of electromagnetic radiation exposure on children have never been adequately studied, especially in the places where kids spend their days, classrooms, playgrounds, and youth sports fields. Although we've had several incidences, as I pointed out, of cancer clusters that would indicate there's an issue there. Until science catches up, communities must retain the right to apply caution near schools and children's outdoor spaces. Yeah, this is very much like what we're going to be talking about here in a moment. The psychedelics. Should we bother to test this stuff first? Oh, no. There's some money that Trump and his people can make off of this. So let's just forget about the testing. 14 Republicans, including Dan Crenshaw, co-sponsored the bill. Soon to be former Congressman Dan Crenshaw, a warmonger, a political prostitute should say. He's preparing for life after Congress when he collects his payoff. So opposing the bill, those who oppose it argued that it violates states' rights. Again, there's no such thing. Institutions do not have rights. Governments do not have rights. Individuals have rights, and we should remind ourselves of that on this 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, that we have rights that come from God. Why? Because we're created in God's image. No state is created in God's image. No institution is created in God's image. That's human beings. Only human beings have rights. That's why we use the phrase human rights. Unfortunately, the left has taken that phrase and made it odious, just like they've taken the phrase, the word liberal, which used to mean that you supported liberty and freedom. They've made that an odious term as well. So states have powers, and the founders who wrote the Constitution were very clear on that. They used the appropriate words. They understood that rights come from God because we're in his image, and powers are things that we give to institutions. Powers come from the people, and they are delegated to the institutions, and the states and the people delegated some specific powers to the federal government, and Madison and others knew that there was going to be wiggle room in the Constitution for them to say, well, we have federal supremacy and we have a commerce clause and we got all these other things. And so we're going to imply all these powers that we have. And they shut that down with the 10th Amendment. And we should remember that, and we should remind them of that and remind the public of that as well. Every time they do a power grab, it's a violation of the 10th Amendment. Tony Lyons, who was president of Maha Action, they were the ones fighting this. He wrote a letter to Traitor of the House, Mike Johnson. He said, what began as a narrow one-page proposal has exploded into a roughly 100-page omnibus bill that would strip state and local governments of meaningful control over wireless infrastructure. You know, when you get a 100-page bill from Congress, though, I don't know if it's fair to call it an omnibus anymore. I mean, they typically do bills that are thousands of pages long so that nobody has the ability to read it. And if you only do a 100-page bill, I mean, that's just a little memo that they put out there. The letter suggested the bill violated the 10th Amendment, which protects states' rights. No, state power. State power. Let's get that correct. And so then you have Trump's executive order on psychedelics. From the guy who is hallucinating like a large language model. The president's facilitation of research and FDA review could help make psychedelics available to approved patients, says Reason. But what about everybody else? Look, let me make it clear. I do not support drug prohibition. I also do not support drugs. There was always that was one of the key sticking points of the Libertarian Party when we talk to people. They'd say, "Well, you people are crazy. You want to sell heroin out of vending machines?" And the guy would respond and say, "Only if they're privately owned." Well, I don't want to sell heroin out of vending machines. I don't want anybody using it, but I also don't want the government taking the power to prohibit anything. Again, it's a usurpation of power. When we had the 18th and 21st Amendments, the 18th Amendment declared alcohol prohibition. They needed to amend the Constitution. They don't have the power in the Constitution to prohibit any substance that people want, any food, any drug. And then the 21st brought it back. And then we just ignored the Constitution. Why did they go to all that trouble? You know, two constitutional, what do we have? Like 26 or something, 27. I don't even remember the number of amendments that we've got. But, you know, you're looking at something that's, you know, two of those are a direct denial of the power of the federal government to conduct the war on drugs, to have prohibition. You can't say that it requires a constitutional amendment to prohibit alcohol, but it doesn't require one to prohibit marijuana or magic mushrooms or whatever. I just got to say, though, you know, I don't support drug use, especially mind-altering drugs. But the psychedelics, I would say, are even worse. There's an element of divination, a spiritual element of this. It's not just some of the hallucinogenic things, but it actually, when you look at people who are, what is that drug, Travis? Is it
ayahuasca?
DMT, is that the one?
There's DMT where they see the machine elves, and then ayahuasca is the one they go out to do in the desert or whatever.
Yeah, that's the one where people keep seeing these same machine elves and stuff. And it's like, well, you don't think that you're getting in contact with other dimensional beings, demons? You think that might be why why God condemned it, and why the people who translated it conflated the terms of pharmacy and drugs, pharmakia. That was translated as sorcery, right? So, you know, you got Donald Trump passing, declaring an executive order saying we're going to bring back sorcery. We're going to make sorcery great again with an executive order, and we're going to do it at warp speed. That's the key thing. It's astonishingly effective treatment for addiction, they said, and for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Well, you know what else works for PTSD? Not starting wars of aggression, not having wars of choice. That's something. It also, there's not any drugs that bring back limbs that are blown off or bring people back to life. That's another aspect of this. You just look at PTSD. Oh, we got to do this for our great military heroes. If you had any respect for the people in the military, you wouldn't be starting all these wars of aggression. Yeah, we're doing Iran now, and he's boasting, I didn't do this for Israel. I did this on my own. Well, be careful what you brag about. Then he's boasting about how next he's going to go to Cuba. Well, don't talk about PTSD then as if you're doing something special for the troops. You put our country at risk. It doesn't help our national security to start these wars. You lose these wars. People lose their lives. They lose their limbs. They lose their minds. And then your offer is to give them psychedelic drugs. How contemptible a man and an administration we have with all this stuff. Yeah, you might say it's astonishingly effective, but look, the real thing that is effective when you're talking about addiction is not psychedelics. It's the Teen Challenge that was done by David Wilkerson. He wrote the book, The Cross and the Switchblade. He went to New York, and he started working with teens that were in gangs, and he did that, I think it was in the 60s or something. Matt Trojala, who is a pastor, has been on, and he talked about how it turned his life around. He was in a broken home, and he became a gang member, and he got addicted to drugs, and he was looking at time in jail and so forth, and it turned everything around for him. You know, Christ is more powerful than psychedelics. Christ is more powerful than sorcery, than pharmakia. This is what we should be looking at. They say, well, we've done some studies, and the studies show that it is 40% effective. 40%, 30 to 40% remission rate for conditions like PTSD and for addiction and things like that. Well, you know, we were talking to Matt Trojala. He pointed out this Teen Challenge thing they did had an 80%, actually it's more than 80%, it was like 87%. And then the story behind it was there was a federal committee where they were looking at this and said, that's not believable. I don't believe that. And one woman decided she was going to blow this up and investigate it. A black woman who was on the committee, she looked into it and she said, actually, you're wrong. It was something, not 80%, it was 87%, she said. And it changed her life. And she became a Christian. And so we're getting offered all of these fake, quote unquote, solutions that are out there. Trump goes further. He instructed the FDA to issue national priority vouchers for psychedelics. So there we go. I guess they're going to pay for it as well. The voucher program, which the FDA announced last June, entails ultra-fast timelines. I guess we could say warp speed, right? For his warped vision of the world. Ultra-fast timeline for regulatory review of breakthrough therapies with a target of only 1 to 2 months rather than 6 months or more. Yeah, how has that warp speed stuff been working out for all of us, huh? You want to keep doing it again? You want to do it with psychedelics now? So I think instead of warp speed, he should have called it Operation Knee Jerk from the biggest jerk in the country, Trump. That's the honesty. I'm pleased to announce, he said, an historic reforms to dramatically accelerate access to new medical research and treatments based on psychedelic drugs with an executive order. Again, there's no authority for the FDA to prohibit anything. And what they've done is they have taken upon themselves the idea that everything is prohibited unless it is expressly permitted by the FDA. And this is the way government wants to set up all of society. That's one of the reasons why they want to have digital ID and total surveillance of everything that we do. Our speech has to be banned completely unless it is expressly permitted. Everything they want to do operates on that basis. And as part of this signing, he had there with him Joe Rogan and RFK Jr., two guys who have really been pushing the psychedelics. Do you really want them as your health advisors? Seriously. Joe Rogan's been pushing mushrooms for the longest time. RFK Jr. has been addicted to drugs by his own admission. You have Representative Morgan Luttrell, a former Navy SEAL. His memoirs of his experiences in Afghanistan during Operation Red Wings inspired the 2013 movie Lone Survivor. And so he's now been elected as a member of Congress. He said he had to go to Mexico to get psychedelic treatment, but that's what turned it around for him. And so, again, that is your choice if you want to make it. But understand you are making a religious, spiritual choice as well. This is not simply about some kind of physical treatment. It's not like about fixing a broken arm or something. This has some spiritual issues with it. And so these warp speed psychedelics are going for your soul. Right?
The real concern is what Big Pharma is going to take from these things and turn into some kind of awful medication. Well, something they can patent is going to be the real scary thing.
That's right.
It's going to come with all kinds of awful side effects.
That's right. Worse
than whatever it already has.
Yeah. Just look at SSRIs. You know, it truly is amazing. These murder-suicide pills. The last thing in the world I would take would be something from Big Pharma that is supposed to affect my mental capacities or my moods or something like that. Because even if you take an antibiotic, you look at some of these Floxins, they warn you, this is going to maybe play tricks on your mind, make you foggy or do some other things like that. Even some things like an antibiotic. Can you imagine, and you should imagine, what they do with SSRIs? Again, we have so many stories about people who have turned that we called them murder-suicide pills. And so he says, it absolutely changed my life for the better. I went through a lot of the programs the veterans are going through. I always kind of felt like I was a victim coming out of those programs. When I came out of this, I felt like I'd gotten my life back. Well, again, I'll just say Jesus can do the same thing for you, and there's no adverse effects. And so they've added a lot of these things. LSD is also on the list, and that is appropriate, isn't it? Because we had the CIA was originally creating LSD and pushing it out there. The deep state, they're finally mainlining all of this stuff here with people. And by the way, they already know that it's got dangerous heart side effects, cardiac side effects. But we're talking about the other heart, your spiritual heart, your soul. Dangerous effects for that. Just be careful what you do. You know, the CIA brings us wars. They bring us the drug war. They provide the drugs for the drug war. They provide the crack cocaine. They provide the LSD. Normalize that. And then they use it. They use the prohibition to accumulate power and to do all kinds of crazy things. So again, the pharmakeia and the psychiatry are things that people use when they don't want to seek healing from God. It's always important to remember. And it's one of these things like the prayer of Jabez. There was some guy who made a fortune with just a little brief kind of aside that was in the Bible about Jabez. And he said he wanted to enlarge his territory. So he just asked God for that, and God granted it to him. So he said, so we're going to make an entire career out of that short sentence. And he did. He made an entire career out of that, the prayer of Jabez. I always think about the actions of Asa, who I guess we could say had an Achilles heel. This is a guy who was the third king of Judah, and he started out really well in close walk with God, and then things started to go bad with him. And as he ended his life, he got an illness in his foot, says the Bible, and he decided that he was going to go to a physician instead of asking God to heal it. And the Bible just says, and so he died. It's kind of the opposite of the prayer of Jabez. Very short little anecdote there. I guess that was his Achilles heel. And whenever I look at this, I'm not saying that we can't use any kind of treatment, that we shouldn't treat things like that. But we should always keep at the forefront of our mind that we treat and God heals. We should always think of it in that way. And when we start thinking of it in the other way, I'm just going to do this. I don't need God to take care of this. I can take care of this. When we start doing that, we start shutting God out of our lives. That's when it gets really, really dangerous. And I think that's really the ultimate warning about PTSD, about the pharmakeia, about psychiatry and the psychiatric drugs and all the rest of this stuff. That's really what we should always keep in mind. But Reason is just looking at the prohibition aspect of it. And again, I said I don't agree with prohibition. I don't agree. There's a lot of religions that I think are very harmful and dangerous eternally for people. I don't seek to have the government prohibit them, though, because I don't want the government to have that kind of power. So just be aware, if you take these things, that you are practicing a religion that is specifically condemned by God. You might be jumping out of the frying pan into a very strange fire. We know what that phrase meant in the Bible as well. But you're talking about money being made, Travis. Stocks from companies that are set up to start manufacturing these psychedelics soared. You had...
so you could say the stocks are high.
That's right. The stocks immediately got high. I wonder if Eric and Don Jr., we're going to find out later, had some stuff in here. So we go from bingo to ka-ching, the cash register. Here's, and of course, Trump is saying, we're doing this for our cherished veterans. You don't cherish veterans, not if you casually send them off to war like you do. You hold their lives very cheaply. But when you look at the amount of money these things, here's a summary. It's this one jumped 24.5%, their stock said. Another one gained 28%. Another one rose 13%. Another one added 17%. It's kind of funny, the different adjectives that they had for different ones there. But they've gone anywhere from 13 to 28% immediately based on his executive order. This is one of the reasons why Trump's wealth has tripled. His net worth has tripled in the first year. And it's not just crypto scams. It's every scam in the book. And he's got his family members in it. Witkoff's family members are in it. Lutnick's family members are in it. Oh, it's not me. It's my family, just like Hunter Biden. We got a half dozen different Hunter Bidens now in this administration. So he said, one person is looking at the business aspect of this. He said it represents a structural inflection point for the U.S. psychedelics sector, facilitating research and regulatory timelines. In other words, warp speed again. The path to commercialization could be even faster now. We're going to accelerate psychedelics as the key next wave of mental health treatments. Yeah, the Beatles would be so happy. Unfortunately, here's the news that they don't want to tell you. And sorry to see this happen to Jordan Peterson, but his family is trying to warn other people about the effects of some of these pharmacia. The daughter of Canadian clinical psychologist and author Dr. Jordan Peterson said Saturday her father is suffering from a, quote, psych med-induced neurological injury. He was diagnosed with chronic inflammation response syndrome, CIRS, in August of last year. He also suffers from akathisia, a movement disorder which creates difficulty in sitting still and causes restlessness. And like you're constantly moving. You can't just sit still. You're tapping your foot or you're walking or pacing or whatever. She said, we figured out that Dad had a psych med-induced neurological injury and had been suffering from akathisia. It's been 6 years since any psych medication. She said it has been horrible. Neurological injuries from psych meds, she said, are far more common than people know. Why is that? Because we've got the FDA telling the companies, if they're big enough, you're free to do anything if you're big enough, right? We're seeing that being replicated now with artificial intelligence. They got the new rules out there that they've got state regulation. We're going to see this soon at the federal level, saying that if you spent $100 million for your large language model or more, and if you harm 100 or more people, kill 100 or more people, if you cause $1 billion or more in damage, we'll waive all the liability for you about that. Even if your AI does things that are criminal, that would be criminal if a human did it. If you got an AI agent out there and it steals money from somebody, well, that's okay. It's you're big, so we're not going to apply that to you. And so it's all began with the pharmacia. Now it's going through all the different friends and donors of these politicians. So Jordan Peterson's daughter said, I made this video to explain what these drugs are, what akathisia is, because they're not talked about enough. And it's misdiagnosed, it's nearly impossible to treat, and it is hidden by the pharmaceutical industry. She said, I'll be jumping up and down about psych med injury awareness from now on, as it's impacted my health as well. And it is devastating. She said prayers are still appreciated. So his daughter urged those using the medications not to rush to leave them despite her father's medical conditions. And this is very important. I've interviewed a couple of times people from the SSRI Stories. I think the website is ssristories.net. Yeah, Travis is checking that, I think. I always can't remember if it's .net or something else. But anyway, I kind of refer to it as the psychological bends. Bends are what happens to a diver who comes up too quickly, right? You have to go into a decompression chamber because if you're under long enough, what happens is the pressure, which is very severe underwater, will cause...
It is ssristories.net.
Okay, good. The underwater pressure, every 33 feet you go down, the atmospheric pressure, you add another atmospheric pressure. So depending on how deep you go and how long you stay, there's going to be a certain amount, and they got decompression tables. And by the way, how did they come up with these decompression tables? I found that out when I was getting my diving certification. They did it trial and error with Navy divers. How's that for loving your military personnel, using them as literal guinea pigs? Anyway, they came up with their tables that were, we should appreciate all the pain and suffering that some people went through to get them. And so if you don't follow that, if you don't come up gradually, if you got to come up quicker because you're running out of air or something like that, then they got to put you in a decompression chamber. The bottom line is that you have to do it slowly. You either come up very slowly or you do some other things. And when they talk about the SSRI stuff, that's typically what happens. Somebody's on these drugs and maybe has some other kind of physiological effect. And Kim I can't remember her name. Kim Witzik, or I think was her name. Anyway, her husband died or committed suicide from these SSRI drugs. He was somebody who was just simply having trouble sleeping. And the doctor prescribed these SSRI drugs for him. And he was having, it set his body on fire. And he was complaining to her about it. She left to go on a business trip. She came back, he had hung himself. And it appeared that he had stopped taking his meds abruptly because of that physical side effect. And that then causes people to kill other people or kill themselves, and they don't know what they're doing. One of the stories that I remember really clearly, she said there was a teenager who was having physiological adverse effects from this SRI stuff, and he decided that he wanted to stop taking it. And when he changed his medication dosage, and it can be just a little bit that you change, he goes to his classroom with a rifle, and he points it at the class, and then he sits on the desk, and he points it at himself, and he points it at the class, and he points it at himself. They got it away from him and got him under control in a hospital. He had absolutely no recollection of that. We've had mothers who've killed their children and killed themselves. It's just horrific, the stories from SSRI. And even if you don't go that way, it can still cause you to have physical damage, as Jordan Peterson's family is talking about. So his daughter urged those who are taking the medications, do not rush to leave them, despite her father's medical condition. So be very, very careful. If you're on these, get off of them very, very slowly. And as all this is happening, we have a couple of different angles of this story about this guy who in Shreveport, Louisiana,
Shreveport, Louisiana.
That's kind of an inside joke in our family. There was it was just the name of that city. Every time we hear it, we laugh. There was a situation where Richard Burton went on to a program. I don't know which program it was. Probably go find it on YouTube. I should have brought it up. And the host was there, maybe Dick Cavett or somebody like that. And he said, "You have such an elegant way of speaking." He goes, "You could probably read the phone book and make it sound like Shakespeare." So they hand him a phone book, and he opens it up, and he goes, "Shreveport, Louisiana." He goes, "See what I said?" And you can do it. So anyway, this This is in Shreveport, Louisiana. And it was a guy, we don't know why he would do something like this, but he went to, I think, 3 different locations. He killed 8 family members, most of them children. And, this could be a domestic dispute. But what they never talk about is SSRI. That's something else that we've seen. Was this guy on SSRI? But this article is not about that. This article is about the fact that Forbes, reporting it, has now got something at the bottom of their articles where you can place bets. Now, money is not involved, so they made sure money was not involved, so they didn't get in all the regulation about betting and everything with these predicting markets, like Polymarket and what was the other one? Starts with a K. But they put it down there, and it's just kind of gamifying it, right? It's making a game out of it. You can get these tokens, and you don't have to pay anything for them, but you can bet on how a story is going to come out. And so what they did was at the bottom of the article, Forbes Predict said, make your prediction about gun policy, whether or not you believe that Congress will pass new gun safety legislation before the end of the year in 2026. So they report on this horrific shooting in Shreveport, Louisiana. They don't ask any questions about whether or not the guy was on SSRIs. And of course, we don't know anything about it yet, but many times you can kind of read between the lines and they'll say, yeah, so-and-so was getting psychiatric help. And if you see that, you can pretty much bet this person was on SSRI, because that is standard procedure from the psychiatry industry, that they put you on SSRIs. Anyway, so they have this thing called Forbes Predict. It's a prediction market feature that Forbes integrated into its platform earlier this year. And so underneath the article, they give you an opportunity to bet on whether or not there's going to be gun control legislation this year. Some of the people looked at this and they said, that's simply ghoulish. The wager coins are never real money, says Forbes, but you can wager on what happens next. Double down when you're confident and flip your call when the story changes. Maybe Alex should do that for InfoWars. That's kind of the way he does the news anyway, right? So he doubles down on this stuff and flips his call when the story changes. Always got his finger in the wind. That's kind of been his reporting model, so they ought to use it as some kind of a monetization model. Anyway, transform the news into a prediction market adjacent betting game. That's what they're doing. Where readers are encouraged to bet faux coins on real news events for rewards. You can use the fake money allows Forbes Predict to circumvent regulatory burdens, right? The person who put this together, by the way, is somebody called the Forbes Chief Innovation Officer, somebody called Nina Gould. Some other people are saying this is ghoulish. Well, I guess it's Gouldish. Who would have thought, right? Anyway, she said, this is what we're trying to do here. And she admits it. The gamification of following a story. That's right. News as entertainment, news as games. Not, what do I need to know to make sure that I can get blindsided by the government and so they can murder my family with some kind of a vaccine or something? Forbes Predict was created by a company called Axiom, which is described in LinkedIn as, quote, bridging media and prophecy. I think these people are more about profits than they are about profits than they are about the other kind of prophets. And again, remember, if we look at the Bible, a prophet was somebody who spoke for God. Now, many times God would underscore that this prophet was from him because he would talk about something that's going to happen in the future. And so we look at it as somebody who's always predicting the future, but that's not necessarily the case. So anyway, we have the ghoulish Forbes employee who gamified news is actually named Gould. I thought that was kind of funny. And speaking of big tech out of control, we have the Tesla driver had their car on full self-driving, and it tried to drive him into the path of a train. I think this is a good metaphor for
brain both. The size of a planet, and here I am shuffling this meat bag about.
I'll show him, right? But yeah, I guess the full self-driving got as suicidal as Marvin the robot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But I think this is kind of a metaphor for both big tech and big pharma. You know, the stuff that basically just wants to kill us. And so this is a situation where
I'm continually alarmed by the number of people that want everything handled for them. They want to turn everything over to some kind of electronic system that takes over and takes control. Oh, your car will drive itself. Your house's temperature will automatically change based on this and that. Hook everything up to the internet and it can just run itself. You don't have to worry about anything.
That's right.
Be engaged. Take control of your life. Do something with it.
Well, this is all about to hit the fan in a really big way, Travis. Palantir is going to be jumping into air traffic control. What could possibly go wrong? Talk about prediction markets. I predict that plane is going to come in this way. Oh, I was wrong. Sorry about that. But just think about how that is going to atrophy the ability of the human air traffic controllers and just how catastrophic it's going to be when it fails, which is inevitable. It's going to get hacked or something. Anyway,
I keep saying it, but my real concern is these things are very, very accurate. They do a very good job right up until they make a catastrophic error.
Yeah, that's right.
They seem perfect right up until it completely fails.
It writes a great legal brief and then it references some court cases that never existed, you know, and that gets you thrown out of court and your license taken. Anyway, this is Joshua Brown of Plano, Texas, said his car's full self-driving mode engaged while he was sitting at a railroad crossing. Footage shared with local media shows his Tesla plowing through the fiberglass crossing arms, shattering his window as a train screamed by just a few feet away. He admitted that he had zoned out while he was waiting for the train to pass. He says, about the time I realized I was moving, the bar was right there. It's like right in front of me, he said. You know, when I first started talking about full self-driving, they had a couple of instances where it hit things and did other stuff like that. And I used to always joke about the movie Christine and the Stephen King novel that's based on the car that had a mind of its own. And I'd always play Bad to the Bone in the back. That's basically what this thing was. But anyway, I'd like to say he said that I wasn't rattled, but it rattled me just a wee little bit. At the end of the day, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. But the good Lord was looking out for me, and I'm thankful I'm still here. He added that he's not suing Tesla over the incident. He said the company maintains that drivers are, quote, supposed to be actively engaged while you're driving. I said, well, truthfully, I was actively engaged, or I would probably be dead, he said. I guarantee you I will have my foot over the brake or just engage it at a train crossing. Maybe you had to disengage the full self-driving.
That's the scariest part. This man nearly gets killed by the full self-driving. He's like, well, I guess I'll be a little bit more attentive next time.
Yeah.
Sell your Tesla immediately, sir. Get rid of it.
Well, you know, that's one of the early adopters of Tesla was Steve Wozniak, the partner of Steve Jobs in founding Apple Computer. And he said, I love my Tesla. But he said, don't use the full self-driving. That thing is trying to kill you. He said that from the very beginning. Apparently, it's still true. And I've driven a Tesla, and it was a great driving car, a very different kind of car to drive than when I'm used to driving. But again, I had, when I was at InfoWars, there was a person there who wanted to do a report. And since I'd been so critical of all the full self-driving, he said, I'd like to get you in the car with me and we'll put full self-driving on. I said, forget about it. I'm not suicidal. I haven't taken any SSRIs. So I'm not going to do that report with you. Anyway, he ironically shares the name with another Joshua Brown of Florida, who became the first known fatality involving self-driving cars in May of 2016.
Okay, this is just the plot to Terminator. They're looking for a specific Joshua Brown to take him out. I don't know what he's going to do, but the machines want him gone. If your name is Joshua Brown, be careful. If you see a Tesla creeping around your neighborhood, don't go outside.
That's right. Sarah Connor. There you go. Josh Brown was alleged to have been watching a Harry Potter movie at the time he was killed by full self-driving. Well, as we're talking about deception from AI, this is a story out of China. A mother reportedly doesn't know her son died because she's been talking to an AI version of him. For years now, a thriving cottage industry in China has been offering families the opportunity to speak to an AI clone of their deceased loved ones for a monthly fee, of course. I could see this as being an add-on source of revenue for funeral homes, not too distant future, don't you think? Well, then our luxury package that we've got here, if you really want to make this last, we
see, the trick is to make your digital footprint so heinous that they can't, recreate you due to terms of service violations.
That's right. Yeah, they can't recreate Nick Fuentes, I guess, right? Anyway, what if the surviving member of a family, though, is not clued into the fact that they're speaking with an AI representation rather than their actual loved ones? So this is a report coming out of a Chinese news outlet called Lichi News. The 80-something-year-old mother, an octogenarian mother of a man who was killed in a road accident, has been unknowingly talking to his AI clone via regular video calls, thinking it's actually him. The woman is reportedly suffering from heart disease, said her family, so they hope to conceal the news of her only child's death. The woman's grandson reportedly reached out to an AI tech businessman, providing him with pictures, videos, and audio recordings of his recently deceased father. The AI businessman joked to Lichi News that he's in the business of deceiving people's emotions, also saying that what we do is comfort the living. One of the videos that they said, you should call me more often so I know whether you're alive and well or not in another city. I miss you so much. I feel sorry that I cannot see you in person. And then we start to get a clue that perhaps this is, maybe it's a cultural thing. But listen to what the AI, how it responds. I'm too busy. I can't talk to you for a long time. When I've made enough money, I will return home to pay my filial piety to you. I think that would be a dead giveaway that we're talking to a large language model.
Yeah.
That would happen in the U.S. I don't know, but Futurism,
either
which
that
reported
or
this.
They've been replaced by some sort of lizard person,
Yeah,
it's a good thing
happens to look like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah,
right?
it's a good thing there aren't a bunch of stories warning against, the rise of robots and the evils of necromancy, or this would be really scary.
This is the weird world in which we live, where psychedelics are now going to be rushed and subsidized for the military after we send them to wars to get them killed, maimed, and
also,
psychologically damaged.
The dangers of mixing AI with psychedelics, these things that are already remarkably efficient at gaslighting and driving people crazy, you're just going to give someone DMT and then, hey, go talk to ChatGPT for 12 hours straight.
That's right. And add some AI custom designed mRNA to mess with their body as well. Well, Futurism says, forgive us for harboring some degree of skepticism. While Lichi News does appear to exist, it seems to be owned by China's third largest TV network, and we were unable to locate the original story or independently verify the claims that were made in it. However, there are people who are selling AI clones of dead relatives. They've actually put a price on it. Only $150. What a bargain.
Yeah. You have to be careful about any story that comes out of China. They have entire warehouses dedicated to, just propping up influencers, making all kinds of fake content that they then export to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. And they want to, just like the people who are creating AI here in this country, they want to make it into this super thing that everybody thinks is godlike intelligence. I mean, we're constantly seeing articles like that as well here in the United States. One of them saying, well, the AI CEOs think that AI is going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere, and it's going to know everything, right? And so is it becoming God, right? Because those are the attributes of God, to be omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, to know everything. So they're saying, well, we checked it already, 2 of those 3 boxes. If we just give them our nuclear weapons, then I guess they can be godlike, So that is the insanity that we are dealing with at this time in our lives. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back. When we come back, we're going to take a look at, this is sent to me by a listener. And I got to say, when I read this, it really made my blood boil. It's some of this Q stuff again. And they're doing it now with the Iran war. It's just amazing how reprehensible this stuff is. We'll be right back.
using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
APS Radio delivers multiple channels of music right to your mobile device. Get the APS Radio app today and listen wherever you go.
This is the email that was sent to me by a listener, first name of Cole. And I got to say, when I read this, it really made my blood boil. I thank you, Cole, for sending this to me. I had not seen this. He said, I wanted to reach out forever. He said, this is a copied post from Telegram. He said, people are investing in this prison planet system and being told that they're going to have Abu Dhabi money once the flip happens. Have you heard about any of this within Telegram, which I'm not about, but it's the whole XRP movement under Trump. And, of course, remember when Trump did the crypto flip, you know, he went from opposing it to supporting it to making it a core investment personally and for him and his family and making billions of dollars off of their junk coins and things like that. And he said, we're going to do a Bitcoin reserve. And that got him all the support of all these tech bros and crypto guys. And then when he got in office, he started talking about, instead of buying massive amounts of Bitcoin, he started talking about getting Ripple, which is trades under XRP, and another couple of coins, which I can't remember what they were. But when I saw this, I thought, well, there you go. There's the fingerprints of all this stuff. That ties this together. So they're saying, yeah, you invest into XRP, Ripple, which really was set up to be something that accelerated the processing speeds for crypto transactions. It was really set up to be more of a, which is really what Bitcoin started out to be, a way of processing payments, not a store of wealth. And so, again, yeah, it is pretty crazy. But let me just read this to you and see if this sounds familiar. You know, it is, as some people pointed out, it was a J.D. Hall who said, I can look at different articles, because he's a writer. He says, I can look at different articles and I can pretty much tell who wrote that. If I'm familiar with that writer and their style, I can instantly recognize it. And I can, in some ways as well, I mean, I can go to Zero Hedge, and there's 3 or 4 writers that I can tell from the headline, because they're good at making clickbait headlines. And I can tell from the headline who they are. And I'll click on it just to say, yeah, that's by that particular guy. I'm not going to report on that, but it's pretty clear when they even the headlines that they come up with. And I want you to listen to this and see if this sounds like somebody we've talked about on this show many, many times. So this is what is being circulated around. Straight locked, gold at 48.80, NATO silent, Senate secured. They all begged him to stop, but he accelerated. 32 nations said no. He said permanent. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer a negotiation. It is now American territory. So he says, connect these dots here. We got Swalwell, who is down. Chinese spy rape intelligence committee, done. Gates, summoned. June the 10th, under oath, Epstein files. Bondi, holding the ledger. They wanted it. She denied them. Blanche, released 3 million pages. The server crashed. Not random. It is all synchronized. Oil locked equals dollar bleeds. Dollar bleeds equals gold surges. Gold surges equals old system dies. Old system dies equals names surface. They built this machine over 76 years. He's dismantling it in 75 days. The Pope called for peace. Peace is not the mission. Saudi begged to lift the blockade. The blockade is the point. China sailed a tanker through. It was tagged before it entered. Every move they make, recorded. Every name they protect, exposed. Every dollar they hide, traced. The replacement is loaded, gold back, quantum secured, waiting. How does that sound like to you? That was either written by Steve Pieczenik, but more likely it was written by the same people who wrote the script for him when he told people about the sting. Every bit of this, everything that Trump has done, you turn it into a victory because you lie about it. And then you throw in all of this other nonsense about quantum this and quantum that.
You can make a post hoc defense for almost anything.
Yeah, that's right. You're watching the controlled demolition of the old world. Nothing can stop what is coming. Same voice. Same total BS. It's just amazing to see this stuff repeated over and over again because it works. This is what gets the MAGA people so deep down this mind control thing that they can't see anything. It's like it's all 4D chess. No matter how bad it looks, no matter how bad it is, they can always tell you that this was the plan. And then he sent me another one. I'll just give you a little bit of this. This doesn't have the same voice in it that the Steve Pieczenik nonsense did. But this is one executive order, and every bank in America must verify if you are a U.S. citizen. If you're not, your account is closed. No loopholes, no games, no exemptions. And watch what happens next. False identities disappear overnight. Ghost accounts tied to fraud vanish. Illegals can't get paid, can't wire money, can't live off the system. Self-deportation skyrockets. No raids needed. Yeah, these people are trying to escape the police state. Just amazing when you look at this. Or, if you're not a citizen, you don't get a chance to do any banking. Your account is closed. Or maybe if the regime doesn't like you, doesn't like your politics, doesn't like your religion, then it's closed as well, right? They've been working on this with geospatial intelligence for a long time. Geospatial intelligence was boasting 30 years ago about how we can determine somebody's politics, their religion, things like that. We can determine that from just watching their actions and who they're interacting with and where they're going and when. So again, the fear of foreigners has these people begging for a police state. And this goes from mandatory e-verify to now this executive order over banking. If he does something like this, then, it's a good thing, says MAGA. It's amazing. These people can't think through the extensions of what the implications of this are at all. Billions in waste and fraud and abuse will get cut off at the source. Oh, will it? Trump created this Gestapo of ICE and their tactics. But he didn't do a thing to shut down the Somali fraud. As a matter of fact, they nearly doubled the amount of money that they give to refugee program like that. Went up by 80%. Went from $6 billion to $11 billion. They increased the welfare magnet. At the same time, they're increasing ICE and the police state. That's not an accident. That's not incompetence. That's deliberate. They want to have the problem because the solution is always a police surveillance state. And that's what these people are cheering. It's absolutely insane. So this isn't cruelty. This is clarity. No, it is clearly cruelty. This is what law and order actually looks like. No. Clear rules, equal enforcement, no incentives for breaking the law. Well, that's not what Trump looks like. Trump is about no rule of law. Trump is about executive orders. I can do anything I want. And there's no law that constrains me at all. It is a system, they said, where if you want access to America's benefits, you follow America's laws. This is the spirit of fascism, the spirit of worshiping the police and the police state. Yeah, Trump can do anything he wants. He says that, and these people cheer him. It's absolutely insane. Let's take a look at some of the Trump fakery that is out there. Finally, some people who have a lot of influence, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are finally questioning Trump's assassination attempt. And it should be questioned. I said this from the very beginning, as a matter of fact. And let's see, where is that clip in here? The WWE clip that I've got. Here it is, right here. I put together, one of the first things that happened to all this, Karen said, I think that he cut himself, And as time went by, this ear, which instantly grew back, oh, it's a miracle. No, it's not. It's just another lie. It's the kind of stuff that I think he learned at WWE with Vince McMahon. And of course, he made Vince McMahon's wife, Linda McMahon, made her the head of the Department of Education. And he used to do all these, the billionaires battle at the WWE and all the rest of this kind of stuff. I had a cousin who really loved professional wrestling. He used to go to the Armory in Tampa to watch it live, and Dusty Rhodes was one of the wrestlers down there. I remember them talking about that. And I said, that stuff is all fake. And he said, no, they're really bleeding. And it's like, yeah, they really are. But I'll show you here what they're actually doing. And Trump would know all of these tricks. As a matter of fact, there was a report that was done in the mid-'80s. We had John Stossel talk to a guy who was a professional wrestler, and he showed him how you can do body slams and all the rest of the stuff. He had John Stossel flipping this guy and body slamming him because the guy was doing all the work. I mean, these guys are real athletes, but they're like circus figures. It's like Jackie Chan or something. Don't tell me that Jackie Chan fight is real. We know it's staged. Still impressive what they're able to do, but the bleeding and all the rest of this stuff, when we look at it, and we'll talk more about the ear thing, but I just wanted you to see these clips about how they use blood.
In order to bleed during a match, wrestlers will use a razor blade that's either given to them by the referee or has been hidden somewhere in their ring gear. The camera will typically cut away from the wrestler following the spot that's meant to make them bleed. This is something the agent of the match should be able to communicate to the truck, so that they know not to shoot the wrestler cutting themselves. However, the handover of the blade and the act of blading itself has been picked up by cameras on plenty of occasions.
He freed himself from that chair and just Hangman. He gets win and man, oh man, I don't know if T2 will ever be the same again.
These guys rub their hands across their forehead and all of a sudden it's blood. Here's the guy that's down. He keeps hitting himself with a razor blade. So he gets up, he's all bloody. Fight.
Hogan is mounting and punching Kidman. Bischoff gets in with a chair. He says, hey, get up. And Hogan gets up, turns around, he says, I'm not ready, dude. And he turns around, digs.
He runs the blade coast to coast right as the camera zoomed in on his forehead.
Somehow there's already blood smeared on the chair.
God.
What about all the blood? There's plenty of blood in professional wrestling. Is that fake too? It's not, says Eddie. The promoters want real blood. He says there's an expression for it. Red turns to green.
Red turns to green means when you get blood, that turns into money.
Real blood?
Real blood. There's no such thing as a blood capsule.
He showed us how it's done. He takes a double-edged razor and cuts it up so it's only 1/8 of an inch wide. Then he wraps it in tape and hides it in the tape on his wrist.
Some keep the blade right here, in their mouth, some in their tights, some on their finger.
In the middle of a match, or sometimes it's when a wrestler is thrown out of the ring, Eddie says he'll pull out the razor blade and cut himself on the forehead. He says they do it themselves because they don't trust the opponent to do it carefully enough. And if you look at many wrestlers' foreheads, you can see the scar tissue. Eddie volunteered to show
Wow,
how he
look at that.
Well, you take it out like that, you go just like that.
And then gradually during the match, it would drip around over your face.
That's it. See, if I was sweating, it'd pour.
Lashley wins. Lashley wins.
Which brings us to Trump.
So we gotta move to the bus.
Let me get my...
Okay, watch out.
Wait.
Yeah, he learned professional wrestling well, didn't he? Here he is that time he shaved Vince McMahon's head.
Warrior reprieve. Come on, Bobby, let's go. How you doing, man? How you doing? I would love to hear what Mr. McMahon is saying. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, my God. Oh, no.
And then he just sits there like he's in a stupor while they put lather on his head and get about 6 inches high. Because, you got to do that to shave somebody's head.
Donald Trump is having a little too much fun here, Jerry. Hey, they're actually shaving Mr. McMahon's head. Look at that. I was a striking thing. Do you believe
You're humiliating me. Oh, no. Yeah, that's our president. That's he knows how to play that game, doesn't he? Just think about how deep and sophisticated the powers that be are to be able to put him into office and pull off something like this. And of course, as they talk about it, they mention the people who died in order to, at least one, Corey Comparatore, who was seated behind Trump, was killed. And the person who was the alleged shooter was also killed by authorities. So you have to have people die when you play this game in order to make it look real. Marjorie Taylor Greene retweeted a lengthy post by Tricia Hope, a self-described J6 activist, where she questioned the shooting and the legitimacy of the famous photo of blood dripping down Trump's face with his fist in the air, yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." She said, Corey Comparatore's family deserves to know the truth about Matthew Crooks and what happened in Butler. President Trump, of all people, should be leading the charge. Why isn't he? That's the big question. And so again, we don't have a big question for what happened with COVID. We're not going to do an investigation for that. Well, again, we've had situations like this before. We had 2,753 people die in New York City, 9/11. Plus many still dying long term from the after effects of what Rudy Giuliani did, pushing people in to clean up. We had 184 people killed in the Pentagon on 9/11, another 40 on United Flight 93. So she said for her, what tipped her off was Trump speaking at the RNC shortly after that. She says, Trump began to speak. He started with this. He said, "So many people have asked me what happened. Tell us what happened, please. And I therefore will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time, because it's actually too painful to tell," she said. She said, "As I stood on the convention floor, you could have heard a pin drop as he spoke. My first thought was, how odd for him to begin this way. He was nearly assassinated just a few days before, yet he's declaring that this would be the only time that he spoke of it. That was my first red flag." Really? Not COVID, not the ear. She said it was completely out of character for Trump. But again, when you look at this stuff, for me, there was a guy who said, well, a lot of people say that you couldn't just hit the ear. Well, we're going to show you that you can do that. And they had a dummy that was that they set up to test ballistics. So it has a gel that has the same kind of consistency as the human body, flesh and fat. It's got rigid parts in it that replicate bone structure and skull structure. They set this thing up, and they had to take a couple of shots before they could just hit the ear. When they hit the side of the ear, it blew the ear off. Now, you could say, well, maybe it just grazed it. Well, if it grazed it, why doesn't he have a notch there? I mean, if it hit that enough to make it bleed, it would have left a notch if it was a bullet, and it would not have grown back. That cartilage does not grow back. As a matter of fact, you've seen, if you look on social media, you see a lot of pictures of people put up ears that have been hit or nicked with something. You see a notch in them that's there. You've got two Republican reps, Mike Kelly and Pat Fallon, accused the FBI of stonewalling the House investigation. Really? The FBI stonewalling an investigation? Say it's not so. I can't even imagine Kash Patel stonewalling an investigation. You mean like Epstein? Especially an investigation that involves Trump. Could not possibly be the case. You also have a former Secret Service agent, Anthony Cangolosi, and the widow of the other guy who was killed, Comparatore's widow, Helen, have also publicly expressed dismay that more details about that day have not been released. So the fact that you're not going to investigate it, that is something, I think, that the dog that did not bark, the FBI that did not investigate, that's the kind of stuff we typically see around these questionable events. But none of this story holds up. None of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene stokes Trump assassination plot rumors is a headline from Yahoo. They say Marjorie Taylor Greene has joined the disgruntled group of MAGA stalwarts. So in other words, if you question something that is obviously a lie, you must be disgruntled. You just have Trump derangement syndrome, right? It isn't that you question whether or not this could be true, but you just don't like him. And there's a lot of dishonorable, crooked politicians out there, I got to say. Trump is in a class by himself. So, yeah, I don't like him. That doesn't mean that what I say about him isn't true. I try to make sure the stuff that I say about him is just true. So if you can't look at this story, said Hope, if you can't look at this story and use critical thinking skills and have at least some questions, you are the problem. And we need you to snap out of it, she said. Well, again, all of these stories are just basically fables and myths. And of course, the next one that he's queuing up is going to be this UFO documents. He said, it's going to be very, very soon. He keeps talking about it. The next distraction, diversions, disinformation. That's your 3D chess, folks. And it's all very dangerous. That could be the 4D chess. Trump expects his administration to begin releasing documents very soon related to extraterrestrial life and unexplained phenomena. Yeah, so I guess he can put out a new Trump Bible, the Great Delusion Edition. I was going to have a section in there about UFOs. I recently directed the Secretary of War to release government files relating to UFOs. I'm pleased to report today this process is well underway, and we found very interesting documents, I must say. Yeah, who's going to want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein after we got some ET nonsense that is out there? It is bipartisan deception, by the way, just like 9/11, just like COVID. Will we have to provide our DNA to TSA before we can fly so they can verify that we're human and not alien? That'd be another thing, right? I remember when they did American Carol, who were the guys that did it? There's a couple of brothers who did it, and Zucker brothers or something. I don't know. Anyway, they anticipated the strip down at the TSA. And so they're making fun of the fact that at that time, I think people only had to take off their shoes or something and have them x-rayed. So they had people going through the line. They had to take off all their clothes one by one. Well, we had this bomber and we had the pants bomber and the underwear bomber and the this and that. So you got to take everything off. Well, maybe, they'll do the DNA will be the next thing they do to make sure that we're human and not alien. They're just documents, said Donald Schmidt. He said, they don't prove anything. We need to stop dancing around the idea that we want to see the files of the documents. I want to hold a piece of the hardware. I want to see tissue sample. Take me to where you're preserving the bodies after all of these years. Well, whatever they're doing, folks, we have a standard of truth, and everything is tested against that. That's the Bible, and that's the bottom line. And so J.D. Vance is trying to get back some of his credentials by saying, well, I think they're demons anyway, but that's a long discussion. Now, it's Benny Johnson, it's people like Tim Burchett, a congressman out of Tennessee. As you saw that when I played the clip yesterday, Thomas Massey talking about how they'd shut down the long extension of FISA, and Tim Burchett was on the Capitol steps, and he was still talking to somebody about aliens. They laughed about it and said, that's all he wants to talk about is aliens. Well, Trump was still at it, even more stuff in terms of not just portraying himself as Jesus, but he also put up some pictures of him with Jesus. And Jesus wasn't throwing him into the pit of hell, as some of these AI videos are showing. They were buddies, right? And so you've got Franklin Graham saying he sees nothing wrong with this guy. As one person put it, New American said, this man who makes war, who presents himself as the Prince of Peace. Yeah, again, so he obsesses over the Nobel Peace Prize, but again, it's just an innocent picture. He just happens to be wearing a robe that has frequently been depicted, and they've got a side-by-side picture here. Maybe you could show that to people, the fallout over Trump's meeting. Look at this side-by-side picture of an imagining of Jesus Christ in a white robe with red stuff draped over it, and they've got the clouds parting and everything. It looks like the reference image that the guy who originally put it up there. But from that original idolatry that was put out on February the 4th, Trump, when he posted it, he changed one of the angel-like soldiers that was above him in the background. He changed one of those. Yeah, that one right there. Lance is circling it. He changed that to an image of Baal that is straight off of the cover of a kind of sci-fi novel. Actually, I guess science fiction is not really. I guess it's ri-fi, religious fiction, re-fi or something.
Urban fantasy.
Yeah. So they had on the cover, they had that exact image, and it was supposed to be Baal. Well, Trump has also got and one person, he secretly believes that Diet Coke kills cancer cells inside the body. Well, we'll see about that. No, actually, there's something that is natural that not Diet Coke. There's nothing natural about that. We need to have something as an anecdote to his turbo cancer mRNA stuff. But yeah, if you want something that is going to help you to fight cancer, we got a lot of evidence to that. You can go to rncstore.com. Take a look at the book by G. Edward Griffin, A World Without Cancer. Take a look at why they are saying that B17 is very effective. We had a lot of people who have said that. I don't know anybody who has said that about Diet Coke, but there's a lot of people who say that B17 has helped them to recover from cancer, to cure them from cancer. And so do your own research. And you can get both apricot seeds as well as the information from J. Edward Griffin at rncstore.com. Don't forget to save 10% off with the code NIGHT. Well, here's Trump lying 7 times in 1 hour, as we're going to go through this list. But as one person pointed out, he never sleeps. He only tweets. They went through the timeline. I think it was over this last weekend. Look at how frequently this guy is tweeting. What is his issue?
He is not sleeping. He is pretending to be Jesus. He is posting all night. He is not well. With gratitude to a gentleman on social media by the name of Harry Sisson, he did a timeline of all the social media activity of Trump over the course of a night. Not a daytime, over the night. Okay, here we go. First of all, 9:49 p.m., he posts the famous picture of him as Jesus, which he now says is him as a doctor, okay? 9:50, so that's a minute after Jesus, he posts a picture of the Arc de Trump, as it's now known. This is this 700-foot thing that's going to be a sort of a Washington version of the Arc de Triomphe. There you go. 10:10 p.m., he posts a meme. 10:32, a news clip. 10:53, a news clip. 12:43 a.m., most Americans are asleep now, he announces the blockade of Hormuz. Okay? 2:35 a.m., he's maybe just had a little doze or he's had a hamburger or something. 2:35 a.m., he posts an article about Joe Biden. 2:37, he points an article on Swalwell, this guy in California who's pulling out of the race for allegations of sexual offences. Same minute, 2:37, he reposts again the article about Biden, the same article. 2:38, he posts an article on his ballroom. 4:10, he posts an article about Iran. And honestly, Harry Sisson, he said this himself. He is not sleeping. He is pretending to be Jesus. He is posting all night. He is not well. And actually, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, others are out there on the back of his recent behavior saying, this guy is seriously not well.
And he's seriously lying as well. This is from RT. Trump lied 7 times in 1 hour. So they've got a timeline of his lies. This guy's got a timeline of his social media stuff that he put out there, but this is a timeline of his lies. On Saturday, Tehran reversed the decision to open up the Strait of Hormuz, saying that Strait of Hormuz has returned to its previous state, is once again under strict management and control of its military. And so we see the on-again, off-again nature of this. Trump is turning the screws on Israel in the biggest pressure move to rein in Bibi yet. Do you believe this? Or do you think this is another WWE? You know, heels and heroes that are out there. He's concerned because he sees Netanyahu pulling down his popularity, the war pulling down his popularity. He's making it very clear to people, I'm the one who did that. Just be careful what you take credit for. Thousands of families displaced by weeks of fighting filled major highways to southern Lebanon on Friday in hopes of returning to their homes. A 10-day ceasefire to Israel's military campaign against Hezbollah went into effect. said the New York Times on Friday. Israel seeks to, quote, dismantle Hezbollah, Netanyahu said, but this will not be achieved tomorrow. It requires sustained effort, patience, and careful navigation in the diplomatic arena. In other words, just like the justification for the continued murder of civilians in Gaza, this is going to be perpetual war and genocide now in Lebanon as well. Netanyahu was left personally stunned by Trump rhetoric prohibiting Lebanon strikes. The next thing you know, you're going to have some big guys hold Netanyahu down in the ring, and Trump is going to shave his head. That's going to be any day now. Maybe they'll do it for the 4th of July extravaganza. So Trump declared the U.S. has prohibited further Israeli strikes. Writing on Truth Social, he said, enough is enough. Yeah, well, what he's had enough of, evidently, is the satire, people calling him a puppet of Netanyahu. This is one that I thought was a particularly funny. It's a parody of Toy Story. It's called Goy Story. Netanyahu playing with a puppet Trump.
You do everything I say. You go wherever I point you. And the best part is, you think it's all your idea.
BB! Put those stupid toys away and come eat your breakfast. You have a very busy day of destroying nations today.
That boy really abuses those stupid toys.
What the hell are you guys looking at? On your feet! We're going to war! I don't know who we're fighting or why, but Bibi said go, so we're going! Don't ask questions! Move out! I gave that kid everything he asked for, and I still ended up on the floor. Good luck, Jack. Hey! Zip it, Sleepy Joe! Can you not see I'm building something very important here? This is the third temple! Come on!
It's Jeffrey Epstein's temple.
Bibi sees it, he's gonna realize I'm his favorite toy.
Yeah, well, the Trump character sounds amazingly like Pete Hegseth, doesn't he? Anyway, the words were clearly not directed at Lebanon or at Hezbollah, but they were squarely directed at Israel. Again, the aggressor targeting civilians yet again. Netanyahu was personally stunned and alarmed when he learned of the post, said sources. So, yeah, we got to play this WWE game out here. It's Trump wants to say, I'm in charge, not Netanyahu. A ceasefire must come from a position of strength and be an Israeli decision, said Gadi Eisenkot, a former military chief of staff at Israel. He said a pattern is emerging in which ceasefires are being imposed on us. We don't want to have any ceasefires. We want war. In Gaza, in Iran, and now in Lebanon. So he's not happy about that. Well, what are the chances of a war between Turkey and Israel? This article from RT said they've never been more real. The latest wave of discussion about a possible war between Turkey and Israel was triggered by media reports claiming Turkish President Erdogan threatened to invade Israel. However, the specific quote turned out to be old. It was taken out of context, and Turkish voices insisted that Erdogan had made no direct statement about being prepared to launch a war against Israel. Still, he has been undeniably escalating his rhetoric towards Israel, including calling it a terrorist state and comparing Netanyahu to Hitler. Well, isn't everybody everywhere saying the same thing? I mean, it's quite obvious that to everybody that's what's happening here. But here's the real context. That may have been something that's taken out of context, but this is the real context. From the Nile to the Euphrates, Greater Israel. And Euphrates runs through Turkey. They got to take part of Turkey in order to realize their goal of Greater Israel. And that is really what is here. So you've had a lot of people who speculated that because Trump is such a puppet of the Netanyahu and these people that he needs to get out of NATO because it's going to create a real problem if Israel attacks Turkey. So maybe we need to be out of NATO so we don't have to attack Israel in order to keep a peace. So that is the promise that which they are headed toward. Netanyahu and Zionism is pushing the world towards economic catastrophe. That's a headline from Brian Shulhavi. And he's absolutely right. The U.S. corporate media whether it's left or right-leaning, is reporting news on this war that is far different from what is being reported outside the U.S. media. 2 very recent interviews, he said, both of them about 30 minutes, show the other side of what the rest of the world is talking about. The Wall Street Journal had actually published a story stating that the U.S. was going to assassinate the delegation from Iran, which forced them to return to Iran in secret after the meeting ended. Again, this is typical of the treachery that we've seen from Israel and now from this government that is dominated by Israel here in the United States. Professor Saeed Marandia, who lives and teaches in Tehran and is a U.S. citizen, was actually at the negotiations. And at the time of this writing, his most recent interview was with Glenn Deason. He said the Iranians fully expect a resumption of attacks by Israel in the U.S., and that's what they're preparing for. He said Netanyahu and Zionism is pushing the world toward economic catastrophe. He also said that if they attack Iran's energy infrastructure again, they will start attacking the infrastructure of the rich Arab Gulf states, starting with the UAE, which he says they can completely destroy in one day. And again, he's talking about destroying their infrastructure, not their civilization. Morandi also said something, said Brian Shulhavi, that I can personally confirm is true, which is that the Arab states around the Arab Peninsula are heading into their summer season, where it gets unbearably hot, where during the day nobody does anything outside, as it's too hot and the U.S. soldiers would never survive day operations in such heat. He said Iran's summers, by contrast, do not get that hot. It's very high altitude. He said that in Tehran today, one can look at the mountains to the north where there is still snow on them, and that one needs a jacket to go outside. Brian Shulhavi said, I lived in Saudi Arabia for almost 4 years back in the 1990s. I stayed in the kingdom through one summer, and I was teaching English at their university. I made double pay for teaching during the summer, as most foreign teachers returned to their home countries in the summer. Air conditioning during those times was a life and death situation. When someone's air conditioning went out in the faculty housing, it was imperative that it be fixed immediately. They had a large staff that was running the energy infrastructure, mostly Filipinos at that time. So when Morandi says that if the power goes down in any of these Gulf states during the hot season, everyone will need to leave, he's not lying. He's speaking the truth. In the second interview between Pepe Escobar and Judge Napolitano, Escobar says the Iranians will not return to Islamabad for the second round of negotiations, but will only agree to a place in either Russia or China, because they're worried that, again, this is a pattern of behavior that we've seen, launching wars as you are negotiating for peace, attacking and assassinating the diplomats who are working for peace. So Russian diplomat Sergei Lavrov allegedly is assuring China that Russia will continue to supply oil to China if they can't get it through the Strait of Hormuz. So Iran has now reportedly suspended all of its petrochemical exports to its entire domestic supply amid reduced local availability following Israeli strikes this month. So their oil production is down about 50%, and they said that they're not going to be shipping any oil out anyway. So they said, so what is all this that Trump is talking about with a blockade? If they've decided that they don't have enough that they can satisfy their domestic needs and their production is down by 50%, they're not going to be exporting this stuff anyway. So what is this blockade nonsense? Well, oilprice.com, he points out, says, in early April, Israel hit several key petrochemical production hubs in Iran, forced them to shut down part of the facilities and the damaged power lines and providers of feedstocks for the petrochemical plants. Iranian authorities have kept the price of petrochemical and related products at levels before the war, despite the surge in global prices. Prices will remain low as Iran looks to support domestic industries and consumers. So that is the reality of what is happening on the ground and what we see in terms of the Trump fakery that is out there. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some of the other issues of WWE and World War III. We will be right back. Stay with us.
But unlike most revolutions where the people rise against a real economic oppression, in our case here in Boston, we are fighting for purely an abstract principle. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. It is, however, not nearly so abstract as the young gentleman supposes. The issue involved here is one of monopoly. Today, the British government will monopolize the sale of tea in our country. Tomorrow, it will be something else.
Liberty. It's your move. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Hear news now at apsradionews.com or get the APS Radio app and never miss another story.
Welcome back. We've got some comments there that we had from yesterday that we didn't get to. Patty Wax said, all the people in the room bowing their heads as Hegseth recited that prayer from Pulp Fiction, right? As if that was real, and it was bizarre. Yeah, it absolutely was. And so we see so many of these different things that are happening out there. And when I look at this next big deception that's going to be coming from the Trump administration, we got an article here from Modernity News, Steve Watson. Scientist claims the universe has 7 dimensions. And I've seen other scientists who say they think that it is 12. And this is based on reconciling string theory as well as quantum mechanics and some other things. I mean, it gets really, really strange when you get to the subatomic quantum level of physics and you start looking at string theory. And so I won't get into the weeds with this, but I got to say, when you're looking at this, many scientists who are not believers have said that I don't think these are extra galactic individuals who are traveling here. I think they're multidimensional, right? And there's a lot of dimensions besides the 4 that we're familiar with, the 3 of space and the 4th one being time. There are other dimensions, and they get into the subatomic particle reasons for that. As a matter of fact, I saw a testimony from a guy who became a Christian because he was first involved in quantum mechanics. And he said, when you look at the fact that these particles can communicate with each other instantaneously, he said none of that makes any sense except in a supernatural sense like that of God. And so what they're saying here is that it's all based on information. In the beginning was information. They said they build this on concepts that are familiar from string theory, from M theory, where extra dimensions play a central role in unifying forces. For now, the proposal stands just as a theoretical bridge. It has not been between quantum mechanics and some other things. It's not been tested yet. But we see these types of things all the time. As a matter of fact, saw an article the other day said, does the Shroud of Turin prove Christianity? And that's another one of these mysteries. Just like Noah's Ark, there's now been some more information about that site in Turkey on Mount Ararat. They found an area that in 1948 they had a mudslide and revealed this boat-shaped imprint that was there. And there's been some people who are Christians who object to that. But, I remember when this was talked about back in the 90s, and a pastor at a church I was at joked, he said, they could literally find all of Noah's Ark somewhere and people would still discount it. They still wouldn't believe the Bible. And I think that's true. We look at this, and I think we can all look at creation. As a matter of fact, the Bible says that. Psalm 19 says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky shows his handiwork, and day after day and night after night, they're pouring out, I'm paraphrasing here, they pour out speech, but they are silent. And so, what they're talking about is the fact that God's handiwork and design can clearly be seen. We see an automobile and we don't ask, How did that come into existence? We know that somebody made it. And when we start looking at the complexity of all of creation, we know that somebody created this. And so Crick and Watson, when they looked at DNA, they said, well, we can't believe in God. We're going to rule that out, right? Not going to have the God of the Bible. So we'll imagine some extraterrestrial beings who came here, and we'll call it panspermia. And so it's going to be, that's your worldview. If your worldview is going to rule out God, rule out the Bible, you're going to have to find some explanation for the intelligent design that is everywhere. Even to the extent that when we talk about genetically modified organisms, you're looking at a code that describes every kind of animal, every kind of mammal, every kind of bird, fish, you name it, and also all the plants. And so both the plant and the animal kingdom has DNA, the same code. And these things are interchangeable in a sense. You can take elements of unique characteristics from a plant and you can graft it into the DNA of an animal, and you can make these chimera that are, you can never do selective breeding, of course, between different kinds of animals. And of course, you can't do it with plants and animals, but you can take elements from the DNA of these different ones and combine them. And so it's this very complex code. I remember we used to laugh about it and say, they've got the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI. They've got all these listening devices out there looking for any kind of electromagnetic signal that is repetitious, that would indicate that there's some intelligent life that is out there. They got fooled by quasars at one point in time because they were bipolar in the sense that, magnetically, and as they're rotating around, it created a repeating signal. So they said, well, that's not natural. It turned out it was natural. So they're looking for things, just like when they look at Noah's Ark, they said, well, we can find something in there that's at a sharp angle. That looks like that was not naturally formed. That was something that maybe was man-made. They're looking at the fact that they found different tunnel-shaped areas that are at different levels there. They said they found more, I think it was potassium in the soil, which would indicate perhaps decayed lumber right at that site than they would see at other places. So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence like that. I would say that rather than focusing on this, if you want some good evidence that just stands to reason, the Creation Museum and their Ark experience up in Kentucky, that was one of the best museums I think our family's ever been to. They have first of all, they had some Amish people make an Ark type of thing out of wood. They got the Amish to do it, and they've got it to the scale of Noah's Ark, which is truly amazing when you look at it. And then they've got several different levels there, and they use that as a museum and kind of present a feasibility study. What would this have looked like if the story about Noah's Ark was true? How many animals would you have to get on here? And how would they be taken care of and so forth? And how would the people live? So a very fascinating exhibit, and it talks about the difference between creation and evolution. We have really good reasons to believe what we believe, and I think it's important to go back and look at that. So again, they're looking at soil testing and all the rest of these things, angular patterns and tunnels that are in there. But while all this is happening, what is making the news is an Israeli soldier who is smashing a statue of Jesus in Lebanon, where they went. Because remember, Lebanon is largely Christian, especially the areas that they're attacking right now. I mentioned this last week when they said, well, the Red Cross showed up. I said, well, this is not a Muslim or a Jewish area because it's the Red Cross. They make this organization use a crescent or a Star of David in the areas that they control. And so when you look at this, the issue is, I think, not the statue per se, but the hatred behind it. We are threatened to have our First Amendment taken away from us if anybody says anything that is critical of this foreign government that is invading neighbors and acting as an aggressor, that is targeting civilians for genocide. If we say anything negative about that, they want to invoke hate speech laws against us. But this, folks, is truly hatred. Truly is an amazing example of hatred.
Right, Jenny, this image of an Israeli soldier smashing a statue of Jesus with a sledgehammer in South Lebanon has triggered widespread outrage, and it has gone viral online. Now, the photo was taken close to the Israeli border in the Christian village of Debel, and the IDF has now confirmed that the photo is indeed authentic. This image, this is a verified photo sent by France 24's correspondent in Lebanon, Serge Barberi. It's dated from early December 2025. It shows us what the statue looked like before. This incident comes amid a 10-day US brokered ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. Local residents in the village of Debel have said that this statue was on a crucifix outside a family home, and Reuters reported that residents had largely stayed in the village of Debel throughout Israel's campaign in southern Lebanon. Jenny.
The image as Debel in Lebanon's south. A local priest said the cross was part of a small shrine in a family garden. He said
now this is another location,
quote, desecration
in the West
of
Bank.
our holy symbols. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar called for an investigation.
I'm sorry, this is Lebanon. There's so many of these.
Every Christian whose feelings were hurt. Israel's military on Monday said it was investigating and viewed the incident with
Look what they did to the country, though.
Debel is one of dozens of villages.
Yeah, that would hurt my feelings if someone did that to my home.
Israeli occupation. Israel and Lebanon on Thursday agreed to a US brokered ceasefire intended to halt fighting between Israel and Hezbollah.
Just total devastation, and we pay for their bombs. When you look at this. Yeah, this is the area that they
sent by France 24's correspondent
That's what it looked like
in Lebanon, Serge Barberi. It's dated from early December 2025. It shows us what the statue looked like before.
So we're here in the West Bank town of Taiba. It really is
the
West
Bank.
Real Christian majority community in the West Bank. And if you look behind me, this is the Church of St. George. It's a 5th century ruin, and it just goes to show how long Christians have been here. For millennia, almost as long as Christianity has existed itself. But look here too. All of this has been burned by settlers, Israeli Jewish settlers who have come by and essentially staged a pogrom here repeatedly. Community members here say on a daily basis. They also bring their animals to graze amongst these olive groves here, damaging the trees. All of it is done to try to get this Christian community, along with all of the Palestinian communities in the West Bank, to either leave the West Bank or leave Israel and the Palestinian territories entirely. The settlers believe this is their land, and they'll do anything to take it.
And here they are spitting on Christians in Israel.
Who have been used by the forces, the Israeli forces, for personal use, pillows, blankets, all in here. And again, just the entire church has been trashed. There's so much soil in it. A lot of it has also been burned. You can see how black these walls are. This kitchen, also belonging to the church, seems to have been used. You can see beans and coffee and whatnot. And this, I think, is again one of the more offensive things that we have found in here. This is the Virgin Mary. Her face seems to have been cut off. You can also see baby Jesus over there, his arm cut off. And actually, the state of this church, it's unique, but the entire town, and this is a very small town, there are only some 8 families living here. All of the town really looks like this. We were speaking to a fellow, so sweet, loves this place so much. He spent 12 years building up his house. His house is now completely gone. I'm going to take you outside just so you can see a little bit of how the village looks like. But I will also tell you that for residents of this village, the most horrifying part isn't even necessarily the state that the village has been left in, but also the fact that the Israelis still remain on that hilltop. That is one of the 5 military positions that the Israelis are remaining in violation of the ceasefire agreement and in what constitutes an ongoing occupation of.
And again, that is Zionism. That is stealing the land from people, destroying everything they have there. So they either have to leave or you kill them if they don't leave. And that's why I played that clip for you last week of the rabbi who said Zionism is against the Torah. You know, the basic 10 commandments. But of course, they've got a different group of commandments, as Ben Shapiro is reminding us, the Noahide laws. And remember, the very first one of the Noahide laws is no blasphemy. They will decide who and what you can worship. And that's one of the reasons why you've had some of these people respond to this and saying that is our responsibility to destroy that kind of idolatry. That's why they destroy the statue that would depict Jesus that is there. But we also see people like Ben Shapiro. This goes back to 2004. They have a picture here of Jesus, Roman soldiers, and the Jewish leaders there that are pointing the finger at him. They label it as the Jewish lobby and the government who killed Christ. But they're aware that they've got a very big PR issue on their hands because they know that the people who support them the most at this point are going to be evangelical Christians who have bought into dispensationalism, which is a religious justification, has been used as religious justification for this kind of Zionism.
Israel needs to be cultivating ties with Christians in America. Christian Zionists are the last bastion of philo-Semitism in America. There's a reason why Christian Zionists are slowly but surely starting to turn against Israel. And it is because the forces at work here, the anti-American forces, know that if they can split the Christian conservatives from the Jews, from Israel, that's the beginning of the end for America. We know this from history.
Oh, yeah?
We know that the second
go back to your tribal identity. That's really what you need to focus on to save America.
Succumbs to the virus of anti-Semitism, that it's not long before that entity disintegrates. So I think it's incredible.
I thought it was a Marxism that they love to sell.
That relationships with Christian Zionists are cultivated. There's wonderful groups that do this, Israel Allies Foundation and Israel 365 here in Israel, but we need much more of them.
The Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs is actually producing together with another organization the first ever Judeo-Christian Zionist Congress.
Fantastic.
Nashville in February, mid-February of this year.
Fantastic.
First ever. And we have
they're bribing a lot of pastors as well,
reaching out to the leading,
giving a lot of them paid
Zionist
trips to Israel to get propaganda.
80 to 90 million strong. And many people are unaware that there are 700 million Christian Zionists around the world. So we are very much aligned with you on that.
Yes.
And so, by the way, is this Israeli government and even the opposition, everyone has made almost a 180 on the issue of Christian Zionist outreach, and not only outreach, inreach. We want to create recognition for Christian Zionists as a legitimate, absolute minority within Israel. And so it's not.
The Christian Zionists, so-called, are the Judaizers that Paul warned people about in Galatians. They worship this ethnicity. LifeSite News tweeted out yesterday, both Jewish and Islamic extremists have a shared hatred of Christianity, and we have to pray for them. It's absolutely right. They said Israel has increased its military attacks in Lebanon. These strikes have killed at least 1,500 people, combatants and civilians, injured thousands more, displaced over 1 million people. Many civilians, including Christians, have chosen to stay in their homes despite the risks for fear of Islamic militants taking over their property once they leave, or the Jewish settlers. This is all about stealing land, and they will kill people for that. If you go back, the term genocide was coined by a Jewish historian who went through this, and he looked at what was happening with the Armenians in Turkey. And, of course, they were killing the Armenians so they could have their land. That's exactly what is happening with Israel. Last month, a Maronite Catholic priest in Lebanon was killed following an IDF bombing of a predominantly Christian town. They said he succumbed to his injuries after being wounded by Israeli artillery shelling that targeted a residential neighborhood in the town. Folks, that is always an abomination, a moral abomination. So when you look at this IDF soldier who is taking a sledgehammer to a effigy of Jesus, it's gotten a lot of people upset, and they look at this as a PR disaster. And it is a PR disaster because it shows the kind of hatred that people who have lived in Israel have seen for quite some time against Christians. So it is hatred, it is genocide. How dare the ADL, such hypocrites about all this stuff, how dare they tell people that we can't criticize the war policies of a foreign government? It's absolutely insane. So this is the operations that they're doing in southern Lebanon. Again, that's part of the area that they need to take over. I'm always reminded of the Psalms. Why do the nations rage against God and against his Messiah? It's kind of a rhetorical question, isn't it? Well, we had a question that was asked to Jim Jordan as he was leaving Congress.
I was just wondering, what were your thoughts on this debate between offensive and defensive weapons to Israel?
I'm for helping our best friend and best ally, Israel, so that they have the qualitative advantage in weaponry and everything else. I want to help our friends. They're our ally.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how many Americans, Israeli soldiers and settlers have killed in the past 20 years?
I'm totally for helping our friend and ally of one democracy in the Middle East. I'm for helping Israel.
But you don't know how many Americans they've killed?
What a traitor he is.
I'm for helping Israel. I'm answering your first question.
I don't care about Americans.
But you have no answer about the Americans killed by Israel.
I don't know if any Americans are killed by Israel.
You don't know of any Americans killed by Israel?
No.
What if I told you it was 15? Did that concern you?
I don't know about that. I have to get the fact.
You don't know about 15 Americans killed by Israel? But you support sending them billions of dollars?
I don't know what you're talking about.
15 Americans killed by Israel.
I see nothing. He's like Schultz, the Nazi.
Facts around. I mean, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about.
You have no curiosity to find out.
No, I'm wondering. You just asked me. I don't know what you're talking about.
But you're comfortable sending them billions of dollars?
Yeah, of course. And you know, the reality is that they've got to reestablish their credentials with the evangelical Christians. And when we look at how different religions view each other, different worldviews, this is a very interesting graphic. What this does is it looks at, when you read this table, you look at Protestants. It's like, well, what do Protestants think about Catholics or Mormons or Jews or Muslims or atheists, right? Do they have a favorable or an unfavorable view of those groups? So they go across and you look at that. And what you find, which really strikes a chord here, is that the group that, when they asked Jews about different groups, different religious groups, they had a positive view of Protestants in general. It was 35%. But when it was born again or evangelicals, it was they had a positive. It was the. We got to look at it the other direction. What did Protestants think of Jews? 35% positive, right? When you look at what evangelicals think, 39% positive. But when you look at what Jews think about evangelicals who gave them a positive of 39, they have a negative viewpoint of evangelicals of minus 40. And as a matter of fact, they are the only groups that are worse than that they have a lower respect for are atheists and agnostics. But they're okay with Mormons. They're okay with Catholics. They have a slightly positive view of the Catholics. They have a strong positive view of Mormons, Jews do. But they really do dislike the evangelicals, which are the ones who are the Christian Zionists. It's kind of interesting to see how this lines up here. So Netanyahu and all of them are looking at this as a huge PR disaster. This picture of this Israeli soldier who is smashing that statue of Jesus. Israel cherishes and upholds the Jewish values of tolerance and mutual respect between Jews and worshipers of all faiths, he says. Well, that's not what that study from Pew showed. He said, all religions flourish in our land. Well, I don't think that is actually what people have seen. Critics do not agree, however, said Stink Uger of the Young Turds. He said, that's why you bombed churches in Gaza? You're currently murdering Armenian Christians in southern Lebanon? You're pretending to care about Christians here because that's who you rob in America to pay for all of your wars. And again, the evangelical Christians have a 39% positive rating. In other words, they look at people, how many say negative about somebody, and they look at a net positive of 39% for the Christians and their opinion of Jews. The Jews have a net negative opinion of 40% for Christians, for those evangelical Christians. Glenn Greenwald, who is Jewish, said, this Israeli soldier was absolutely justified in smashing the head of the Jesus statue because Hezbollah and Hamas were obviously hiding inside. So we owe him our gratitude. So again, like MAGA, they will never figure this out. MAGA.
Well, you see, they're using the statues as human shields, statue shields.
That's right. Marjorie Taylor Greene puts in quotes, our greatest ally. She said, why hasn't the soldier been named? And what actions are being taken? I'm sorry, she didn't say that. Jack Posobiec said that. And that's a good question because the IDF knew they were, the gig was up, and they confirmed that it really was real, that it was an IDF soldier. But then the question is, if they know that it's really an IDF soldier, why have they not named him? Why have they not punished him? And here's another question. Why has Donald Trump been completely silent? When do you ever see Donald Trump silent about any controversy? That's, I think, one of the biggest dogs that did not bark in all of this. The attack is not a one-off. A year ago, writes the New American, the IDF bulldozed a statue of St. George in southern Lebanon. That was part of that report we put together. October 9th, 2024, an IDF airstrike destroyed the St. George Melkite Catholic Church in Lebanon. 8 people were killed. Israel claimed it was attacking terrorists. That's why Glenn Greenwald's statement was really not too far off of the cynical lies. So they have I didn't put this in, but there's a video of the Israeli bulldozer demolishing statues and churches there in Lebanon. And in March, Israel shut down the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, which is celebrated as the site of Christ's crucifixion and burial. So they had a lot of people that were there for, they said it was a Holy Week. And with a lot of outrage, they reopened it. Netanyahu is vowing harsh discipline. We'll see. Again, no name. They did verify, yet they did nothing about it. And again, Donald Trump doesn't even mention it. He doesn't want to go close to that. Israel is the only place in the Middle East that adheres to freedom of worship for all, says Netanyahu. It is not actually the truth. So again, when you look at the Noahide laws, as one person said in Israel, he said, I hope no person was hurt or scared in this incident, but it's not who we are as Torah Jews if we aren't making a statement that these false idols must go from the Holy Land of Israel. That, folks, is the real aspect of this. And think about that next time you look at the zeal for the Republican Party, people like Ron DeSantis, people like Randy Fine, who want to destroy the First Amendment, which is not just about freedom of speech, it's also about freedom of religion. They want to destroy that. If you criticize the military actions of this foreign government. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.